Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this fantastic session about active travel. On behalf of myself and the panel, it's great to see so many people interested in this topic. I'm just sorry I haven't been able to ride a bike here in Baku, although I'm reliably informed that there are some cycle lanes. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests for this discussion. And as Minister for Nature, I'm absolutely passionate about access to the environment and ensuring we have access to blue and green spaces. Hi Fiona, welcome, come in. The need for more greening in urban areas and how we protect the spaces that are precious to us all. And as the Member of Parliament for Coventry, a city that was devastated during World War II, those post-war planners were very, very keen on creating a pedestrianised city centre. So the city of the future that was built and created in Coventry had a vision of a car-free world, which was a deep irony given that most of Coventry's wealth was founded first on the bicycle industry, then the car industry, and then later the jet engine industry as well. We know active travel has a key role in helping the UK achieve its net zero ambitions, getting people active and enhancing the places where we live. We know also transport is the UK's largest emitting sector, and it's not specific to the UK. It's the case in nearly half of the countries all around the world. Road transport alone accounts for 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And last week, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, announced our new nationally determined contribution to reduce UK greenhouse gas emissions by at least 81% by 2035. This is an ambitious target, and clearly a transformed transport sector will need to play a central role in delivering it. We are a mission-driven government with a laser focus on accelerating to net zero as part of making Britain a clean energy superpower, kick-starting economic growth up and down the country, and improving health outcomes as part of building a national health service fit for the future. Active travel, getting more people walking, wheeling and cycling, will support all three of those objectives. My friend Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, has made delivering greener transport a key priority for her department that goes beyond eliminating the sector's contribution to climate change and means capitalising on the opportunities of transport's net zero transition to reduce congestion, air pollution, and to realise safer streets for all, creating towns, villages and cities where people can move and people can breathe. That commitment to delivering greener transport, including through increased active travel, was well demonstrated in last month's budget, with an additional £100 million funding allocated for this financial year, alongside the £54 million already committed, on top of a raft of other funding streams available to boost active travel infrastructure in towns and cities. A new integrated national transport strategy will facilitate seamless journeys with more journeys by walking, wheeling and cycling. Active travel has been shown to offer a better return on investment than traditional investment in roads. We get approximately £5 back for every £1 spent. And we know it enhances the nation's health, improves air quality, and could result in 1 million fewer GP appointments per year. Active travel has many co-benefits. Active travel funded schemes include enhanced streetscaping with new planting and creating social spaces alongside rain gardens to ease water runoff. In rural areas, active travel routes can use existing land, such as former railway lines and Roman roads, to enhance access to nature in green and blue spaces. And in urban areas, the economic and environmental benefits of walkable environments are huge. The Living Streets Pedestrian Pound report, released last week, shows pedestrian spaces can revitalise urban areas, like those city planners in Coventry knew back in the 50s, and create significant economic value. The redevelopment of Sheffield's Castlegate area, for example, where 2 traffic lanes were reclaimed, has attracted new footfall, investment and jobs. 600 new jobs created and a 500% increase in biodiversity. We know cities where people can walk and wheel see more money spent in their local shops. Working alongside national highways, Network Rail and HS2, our high-speed rail line from Euston to Birmingham, active travel routes can be implemented alongside large-scale infrastructure projects to provide benefits to people, nature and communities. That's why my department, DEFRA, is also taking action to provide more routes for people to walk and, where possible, cycle. We are building the King Charles III England Coastal Path, which at 2,700 miles when complete will be the longest waymarked and maintained coastal walking route in the world, and we know just how much that will bring to those coastal and rural communities. We're also producing an Access to Nature initiative to make nature more accessible and inclusive. So DEFRA will be engaging with Active Travel England to ensure green and blue spaces can be accessed via walking, wheeling and cycling, so people can access nature and their beloved precious spaces without the car. It's essential that policy making on active travel and enhancing access to nature is joined up, so more people from all ages and all walks of life have the opportunity to walk, wheel and cycle to and through high quality green and blue spaces. It is my very great pleasure to introduce my friend, Chris Boardman, who is the National Active Traveller Commissioner for England, to be my co-chair and panellist. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that. So my job, as Mary's just outlined, is Active Travel Commissioner for England, and I'm also Chairman for Sport England. So I work for 2 government departments, both really interested in health. But today, this one's about transport. My background is as an athlete. No one should laugh at that. I've got the pictures to prove it.
And the medal.
They are in black and white.
And the gold medal.
And I constantly get asked whether I've ridden here. No, I haven't ridden here, but we've got a group at the back that actually did. Took them 5 months. Maybe we'll get a question from them a little later on. I wanted to tell you a little bit of a personal story, actually. I mean, to start with, I think it's amazing and really exciting that this is the first time that our lowest carbon form of transport has actually appeared on a major platform at COP, and I think that's quite exciting. But despite, well, I think it's the reason it's been missing from the big stage is when you're facing a gigantic global problem, it just seems so small and everyday. But that's its superpower, and I think that's why it's been overlooked and why now is the time to tap back into that. What happens when you first and last step doesn't lead to the car, I think is the question. And the Minister actually referred to integration there, and I think that's probably the key word for today. But I wanted to tell you my personal story. So before I became National Commissioner, I used to work for one of our mayors in one of our regions, Andy Burnham, in the Greater Manchester region, a conurbation of about just under 3 million people. And when I started to work for him as Active Travel and then Transport Commissioner, I thought I better make an effort. I'll try getting the train to work. So luckily for me, I had a small path of 6 or 7 kilometres, and I rode to the station. And after a few days, I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this a big experiment. I'm going to park the car and leave it there. And I did that for 2 months. And after 2 months, I thought, I'll sell the car, because I can always just buy another one. And then that lasted for 5 years. Without that path, I've been reflecting on this, and then we've got some data behind it. But without that path, and at the moment we credit our carbon for active travellers 6 or 7 kilometres not driven. So it's a tiny, tiny amount. But without that path, I would not have ridden to the station. I wouldn't have gone the road route. I wouldn't have mixed in with bleary-eyed drivers, sometimes really late at night or very early in the morning. I'd have been one of them. So that path stopped me driving, not just to the station. I would have driven all the way to my office in Manchester. And that's 14,500 miles a year I wasn't driving. So that's the key difference that currently we don't take into account. And that's 3 tons of carbon every year. And that's absolutely huge. So we've also got to look at the spin-off benefits as well. So active travel, while I'm doing that journey, I am looking after my own health. I am using public transport more because I didn't have a car, so not just for this journey, but for other journeys. And we now know through studies we've done that a good active travel infrastructure increases the catchment for public transport tenfold. So that's a huge, you're creating customers, a ready supply of customers for transport investments. So we then looked at, well, what would happen if other people had the same opportunity that I did, and how many of them are there out there in the UK, in the world for that matter? What would happen if other urban dwellers had the same choice? Well, in the UK, there's a little more than 8 million households that have more than one car. And I'd stress that's not necessarily affluence at the moment. It's because people don't feel they have a choice. So even with small incomes, they feel compelled to run 2 cars. So if they were enabled to make the same choice that I did, that would be 17 million tons less CO2 every year. So you can see how this is suddenly becoming really significant. Then we looked at a recent study by Oxford University, and that showed that if people switch just 1 trip a day from car driving to cycling or walking, it reduces their carbon footprint by about 0.5 ton a year. That's almost a 30% reduction in transport-related emissions for an average UK urban resident. And if 1 in 5 people did that across Europe, it would cut emissions for all car travel in Europe by 8%. So suddenly active travel is starting to get really interesting, and it is a big player on the decarbonisation stage. And we've only just scratched the surface. I think what I've just illustrated, I hope, that at the moment we are under-researching and under-considering active travel as part of the solution. So we're the first generation to understand this problem, and we are the last to be able to actually do something about it. It's a big responsibility, and I think active travel has a large part to play in that. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Jill Warren, who's been at this for a very long time. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're sitting on the panel too. So over to you, Jill.
Thanks very much. This is on, isn't it? You can hear me? Yep, great. Okay. So, yes, I represent both the European Cyclists Federation, of which I'm the CEO today, and also the PATH Coalition, the Partnership for Active Travel and Health, which is a coalition formed in 2022 that calls on governments to make a real commitment to walking and cycling to address the climate, health, and equity challenges that they face. We know that the potential for walking and cycling is absolutely huge. Just to illustrate that a bit, globally, about 60% of urban trips are less than 5 kilometers. That's a distance that's eminently walkable or cyclable. Yet, just over 50% of those trips today are made by motorized vehicle. So just think of all of that potential if you could turn that into more walking and cycling trips. And if you factor in the real game changer that e-bikes have become, that extends the range further, which extends that potential to about 75% of urban trips that could be done by walking or cycling. How many have tried an e-bike? Yeah, it's like having a superpower. Love it. Yeah, really excellent. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that said that the combination of active travel and public transport can reduce emissions by...
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Jill.
Okay, thanks very much. Hope this mic is working better. Yeah, so the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change estimates that potential at reducing emissions by 50%, the combination of walking, cycling, and public transport by 2030, if we take decisive action. So the PATH Coalition and the European Cyclist Federation, we really want to enable and empower more people to cycle for their daily journeys. And the key things we think are important to do that are infrastructure. The number one reason people will give for not cycling more, or not allowing their children to cycle is that feeling of safety. And if you ask them what would make you feel safer, it's having the proper infrastructure to do it. Campaigns to support a shift in people's mobility habits. Land use planning that enables more walking and cycling infrastructure. The integration with public transport also to support truly sustainable longer journeys. And yeah, last but not least, capacity building, because we know, and I'm sure Arlette will talk a bit about this, that you know, we need more knowledge and skills about how to build the proper infrastructure for walking and cycling, because most of our city planners, traffic engineers were taught in a car-centric world, and that's what they know. So, PATH wanted to raise awareness about all of this potential, as I mentioned. We did some analysis, and we analyzed the 197 UNFCCC countries to see, do they have some kind of a walking and or cycling policy, and do they have walking and or cycling in their nationally determined contributions and their climate commitments. And we found only 8 countries in the entire world that ticked all of the boxes. So that had walking and cycling policies and walking and cycling in their NDCs. Only 8. And it's maybe not the countries you would have thought. So they are Singapore, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Uganda. And worldwide, about 25% of countries had some form of active travel in their NDCs, but a lot of times it was only a cursory mention without any, kind of ambition and targets behind those. Worldwide, about 56% have some kind of a walking policy, 22% cycling policy. So there's a lot of potential to be able to put those in the nationally determined contributions to get a lot more traction for walking and cycling. I would also ask, and what we look at in our work too, is are governments treating walking and cycling as fully fledged modes of transport? The answer, I would say, very often is, well, not quite. So we see a lot more that can be done there around the world. But we want to help. We're not only here to complain and point out what we're not seeing. We also want to help, so with the analyses that we've done, but also guidance. So we have produced an active travel NDC template with the actions that we think would really create very good NDCs that would help move the needle on walking and cycling. And so I realize that the letters and everything are very small on this slide, so we've also got a QR code that you can download the template, which I'll show in a bit. But basically, our template contains advice on producing a vision, goals, objectives, actions, measures, and outcomes, that will really increase and unlock the potential of active travel in countries. So here is the QR code that you can download it yourself. But I'd like to pass on to Arlette now, who will tell us more about what the Netherlands is doing in this area. And we are and we are so grateful for countries like the UK and the Netherlands who really recognize the potential and are working to unlock that. We know this one works.
Yeah. This one works, so I'll take this one. Again, I have also for the slides. I got all sorts of things to do now. Hello, I'm Arlette van Gilst. I'm director at Active Mobility for the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, and I'm really happy to be here. But first I start with a personal story. You already heard some personal stories, but I think that's the trigger for so many people. I was born with a hip condition, and at the age of 3, it became apparently. And I was hospitalized for many months, and 3 years I was immobilized because my both legs were in a cast, and I was in a wheelchair. And among that time, I remember playing children outside, walking and cycling, and I couldn't do that. And I realized that it was a privilege for all those kids to be feeling free and to be moving around. Because in your wheelchair, wheeling was nice, but was still not electric, and someone had to push me. So I was feeling really immobilized, so that wasn't nice. So I think it triggered something to be working now in active mobility. And I can walk now, and I can wheel, and I can cycle, electric or whatever bicycle you got. So that's why my passion is on nowadays for active mobility. That's my personal story. Oh, and I have to do a lot of things. Sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm like a man. Sorry. That's the start. But the Netherlands wasn't always like this and really bicycle orientated. We started in the 70s, and we also started to be very car orientated. And you see, I think for me it's on my left side, but for you it's on the right side. You see all the streets, and you can also see already the pollution in the back of the picture. And it wasn't safe. So to start something in the Netherlands. And what started was that we felt unsafe, but there were also a lot of accidents, like 3,500 were killed every year with 400 children. And then the people started demonstrating because they wanted to give the children the streets back to them, giving back the streets to the children. So that started happening, but also this coincided with the oil crisis in the Middle East. So the car was becoming more expensive, and they were looking forward to a transport meaning which was really easy and cheaper to pay. And I have to look back again. I'm sorry. And these two big events start changing every city and the Netherlands, because the streets were designed not car-orientated anymore, but people-orientated. I think that's the most important thing for us nowadays. We're still people-orientated, even with new living housing developments. So, in the next minute, I will take you a quick insight into Dutch policy on cycling. And we do it in 3 ways. The why, what and how. Why do we still invest so many money into the cycling? Oh, it's terrible. Thank you. What are our ambitions? And how are we reach those ambitions? And here you see a picture with a lot of advantages of cycling. You can read it. But the most important things for the cyclists themselves is health and reduction of money. They save a lot of money by just taking the bicycle or walking. That's the most important thing. The people in the Netherlands are cycling. So that's a good example to, if you have in another country, those 2 things are really important for people why they cycle. Oh, and now I tell a lot of them. And what are our ambitions? Our ambitions are still to get people on cycling. So we have 100,000 additional people we want to get on a bicycle and to go to their work on a bicycle. And we got it every year, but we still have to have a lot of communications and campaigns for it, so we get them to cycle to work. And also we're working a lot with employers to stimulate them. The other one is all the benefits we've got. We tell them to designers of new housing projects, which help to design the streets different. And the other one is also really important. We have a lot of people in the Netherlands from another background than the Netherlands, and we want to stimulate them to, from a young age, to get them on a bicycle. So we want to learn them to cycle, and we also want to give them a bicycle in return. How we are doing that? That's my next page. And there's three things how we do it. It's like hardware, software, and orgware. And it's very important. The hardware is the infrastructure and the parking of the bicycles. The orgware is the organizations we work together. We work with the police. We work with regional and local organizations. And you all need them. And when you have one plan, you can do it. So that's very important. And the other one is the software. And I'm really proud of it. We made a program with incentives for elderly people to go on cycling. And we call it doortrappen, but in English it is cycling on. And it's cycling on until you're 100 years old. And we already gave a medal to someone, and he's not sitting next to me. On the right side, no, it's not yet 100. No. And but we gave it to someone in the Netherlands. He's still cycling 20 kilometers every day, and he had a gold big bicycle. And what is important for him is that we want them to be safe on their bicycle. So nowadays, some of them are really wearing a helmet because they feel safe, or they have a mirror on their bicycle. So I'm really proud of that. But we're not only doing things national, we're also doing international. Because the Dutch get a lot of questions of all over the world, could you please share your knowledge? And yes, we want to share our knowledge. Please, please, please. But like Chris told us, it's very important to get those 8% in Europe, which are not driving the car, but are just on the bicycle. It's reducing the CO2. So we have, together with Belgium and Luxembourg, at the COP29, we have initiated the Active Alliance. And we're aiming to bring together front-running countries and organizations that together help stimulate dedicated active mobility policies and infrastructure globally. Thank you. Thank you. And the aim is to provide training for 10,000 cycling and walking experts globally. And we have done some projects in a lot of countries, in Africa, in Asia, in South of America. And we're trying to train as much as possible. But we also need other examples, like from London. There's a big change. I've been there 2 years ago, and I've been there 7 years ago. And in between, there was a really big change. And for the Netherlands, it's from the 70s until now. So we don't remember all the changes. So we need from Great Britain, from France, from Germany also to go on with us to the projects in other countries and to show them or learn them how they did it. So that's very important for us. But giving this short overview, I hope to have been able to give you some good examples of active travel. It's very important for us and hopefully also for you. And I want to emphasize that besides focusing on infrastructures, we focus on shifting the mindset of people. And that is the most important of it all. Thank you very much. I give the word to you, Lucy. Good luck.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Real pleasure to be here. My name is Lucy Anderton, Director for Sustainability at the UIC, which is the International Union of Railways. And formerly I was, for most of my career, working at the Network Rail, which is the UK infrastructure manager, and so had the pleasure of working on lots of major infrastructure projects, expanding the railway and improving the customer experience of railways and making sure that's a sustainable projects and service. And so now I have the pleasure of working globally and working with those working in railways all over the world. And it's such a pleasure to join this panel today because we have to all work together, because you're right that there's so many of the transport conversations at the COP have been around the hard to abate, the high emitting modes, and they're forgetting the golden opportunities that is sitting ready to go in active and public transport, and so we have to really be an alliance, a coalition together, and really sort of sharing our messages, and that's why ECF and UIC have got a memorandum of understanding together, and we're working together collaboratively on the NDC work, as well as other projects that we want to work together on. Because I personally, I'm a real believer of cycling and public transport together. I sometimes take the train to work, but most of the time I take a bike. Because it's the fastest and cheapest, and actually I have this gorgeous view of the Eiffel Tower as I drive along. I ride along the Seine in a curb-separated double-lane cycle lane that has been installed only in the last few years, and the mayor has really had a massive vision for making Paris more walkable and cyclable, and it's really transforming it. And because of that, and the dense bike sharing systems that's connected well to a really dense public transport system, it means that I certainly do not own a car and have not for I didn't bring one to France. No, it's not needed, and so that's kind of a big why of why we have to work together, and a big why is just because the only way that trains are going to get their customers is if people get there somehow, because unfortunately you can't take a train all the way to a door-to-door service. It never works that way. So we have to think multimodally, and walking and cycling is really an excellent way for people to get to our stations. And in fact, in the Netherlands, one of the biggest mode of transport is either walking or cycling, and that's common in most places now. So I think our members are starting to sort of wake up to this issue, because I mean, from an operational point of view, it can be difficult to get a bicycle on and off a train, and so they have to really start thinking creatively about how we can do better in sort of connecting and making it easier for people to use active travel, to use passenger rail services. So many of our members are doing that, and actually targeting increasing of active travel. And we're working together on a project called Rail Cities, which is really looking at the active travel theme throughout that project. And there's a few things real practical things that they're working on. Train design, so making them really flexible, adaptable, so that if you do want to take your bike on board, then the spaces are adaptable for that. As well as those with luggage, with buggies, with wheelchair users, etc. So train design is starting to change. And interesting, it's changing because they're starting to think about people more and really involving customers and passenger organisations as well as cycling organisations in the conversation about how we should design our services, our equipment, And that's the case for stations as well. Station design is key in this. It's really the sort of shop window and the place where our modes can really interact and be that mobility hub within a city or a community to sort of make that connection and that seamless connection. And so just as simple as having the bike parking space in a prime space in the station, not at the back where it's dark and you can't find it and the signage is bad and it feels unsafe, but actually a prime spot. So changing it around so that it's not that cars have the prime access to the front of the station, but the most sustainable forms of transport should have the prime access to the station. And so starting to think back on just how we can do that. Clever ways we can digitalize, like looking at being able to tell whether there's a bike space available by looking at the app and seeing that dynamically change where you can be able to park your bike and move there. and ticket design as well, to really sort of encourage being able to, if you want to book a space, or having that kind of incentive for those who are travelling by bike or by foot to use rail as well. So sort of integrating ticketing and inducing that. Because they're really seeing a change in travel behaviours generally, of course, and certainly in rail. So the old sort of expectation that we're going to get loads of commuters travelling every day into cities from suburban areas is changing. Peak times are changing, peak days are changing, and we're getting a growth in leisure and tourism travel on our rail systems. And of course, biking and active travel can be a big part of that piece. And so even if it's just talking about a train station being the start of a really nice cycling route and advertising that, there's some really nice sort of ways that we can work together and encourage the use of both forms of travel in ecotourism and that kind of thing. So it's some really nice work that we're hearing about across our members. So I say it's really about that collaborative design, thinking about how we design our operations, our stations, our services, to sort of think much broader, think about catchments, and how we can sort of really bring customers in a new way that we haven't had to think about or haven't thought about in the past. And Jill was talking a little bit about the NDC work. We aligned our work on NDCs, so at the same time, with the same methodology, we were looking across all of the NDCs that are current today. And we found very, very similar themes. So there was about a quarter were talking about trains in general, but as you said, Jill, they were saying, oh, we should have more trains or something like that, but not really any specific targets, anything that's really actionable or measurable, and certainly not fundable. So there's only about 10% that are really having these specific targets. So together we've worked on this template. We also have a template. We have all the QR codes here together with UITP, or the public transport actors in this as well. So that will help those who are now working on their NDCs. And NDCs get reviewed all the time. I know UK have just done theirs, but you can do it again soon, I'm sure. And to really build the comprehensiveness of NDCs, so that it's not just talking about public transport in mitigation, but also talking about in adaptation, making it more resilient, not just talking about passenger, but also freight, and bringing them into conditional NDCs as well. So those in lower income countries can make sure they have conditional NDCs, and bring climate finance in that sense as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I think this microphone's working. Minister, you just dive in if you want to ask a question, but if it's okay. I know we've got a hard stop in about 20 minutes. I've got a couple of questions that we've already had sent in I wanted to ask the panel. There was definitely a theme there, wasn't there, about integration? And I think the words that kept popping out for me were easy and cheap. So at a national level, we want decarbonisation, we want health, we want economy, but from an individual basis, which is where the change happened, it's easy and cheap. Integrated ticketing, multimodal, and I think that's a really important one, to marry that macro and the micro. And now you've all been involved. The Netherlands, we really hate the Netherlands because you've just kind of done everything. We're so jealous. So there's so much there. It's almost overwhelming. Your approach is incredible. I'll start with Jill though, if that's okay. I suppose the question around that is, how important do you think it is that governments take an integrated approach to active travel in their policy?
Thanks, Chris. I think it's really important to take an integrated approach, and you can view that in different ways. I think given all of the co-benefits that active travel has, you can be taking an integrated approach by also doing cost-benefit analyses that take account of the enormous health benefits that big infrastructure projects will have if they include a big active travel component, or if they're based solely around active travel. Then I think another part of that integration that we see is the equity We know that really increasing the active travel possibilities can really improve the equity in a country, and so, economically and opportunity-wise, that's another way to look at it. And then we heard from Lucy a lot of the integration, just about the, whether it's rail and active travel and all of that, and I think that, for us at least, goes without saying to have that kind of integration. But we do see a lot of missed opportunities when big infrastructure is created. You create a high-speed rail line, and let's put the big long bike lane, the long-distance bike lane, alongside of that, for example. It's so much more expensive to do that retroactively, and I can give you lots of examples of where we've seen that happen. The most expensive piece of cycling infrastructure ever in Brussels, a bridge over the Ring, would have been so cheap if they had built it alongside building the high-speed rail line, for example. That was a 35 million euro, I think, mistake there. Yeah, and I think the law of unintended consequences is something that we need to be aware of. When building a piece of big infrastructure, often cycleways, pathways, and things are cut off. We know of an example in Poland, for example, where a piece of motorway was built that literally cut off cycling and walking access for about 100,000 people that needed that to get to and from work every day. And, unfortunately, that's something that still happens. Yeah. So those are just a few examples there that I could give in terms of integration. But I think there's so much more opportunity out there that we can recognize and take advantage of in a more proactive way.
Thanks, Jill. I'm just thinking some opportunities we have building HS2, which is still in the works. A lot of service roads going in for that that are quite tantalising that they're going in. Are we going to keep them in? But not a question for me, maybe a difficult one for the Minister. Hard to know where to start, really. And I'm not even sure this is the right question because you've been on this journey for over 50 years, but how do you take people with you when you make change? You want to get more people. How do you what have you learned on your journey about taking people with you? You mentioned community.
We don't think we have to change. We start adding or losing some infrastructure or behavioral actions in the structure they got. So we don't say change because most people don't like change, which are being told to do. If you're doing it for yourself, it's okay, but if someone tells you you have to change, they won't do it. Oh, is it worse? Better? No change?
I actually think it might be my headphones. Sorry. I can hear you.
100 years?
Good.
Sorry, I had to do that. So we, in the Netherlands, we don't say change, but we let them see the beneficial of it, the health, the nature, and we make it easy for them. So you can park everywhere. You can easily go to the trains and park your bicycle safely there. And now the people in the Netherlands are getting very old, and we have like a smaller group of younger people and a very group of elderly people. So we are with the hospital or with the doctor. We also are making there some parking places, some parking space safe, so that they can go on their e-bike or the bike. They go to the hospital. So that's an example for me, and it's like listening and learning in the new group, and don't change, but add things to it.
So listen, don't take away.
No.
You give people another choice.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Lucy, you've touched on this. In fact, both of you just have really. In your work in the rail industry, what have you found? What are the top 2 or 3 things you think that works really well in terms of integrated cycling and walking? And I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here, so just give us the really good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, one thing that seems to work is having a real vision, and so the leadership at the railway organisation says, look, we want this, and these are our customers, and we're going to target, say, an increase of 50% cycle users by 2030, and we're going to monitor it and measure it and put a real plan to it. So rather than it just keeping with the regulatory requirements of how many bike spots you need to put on a train, really saying, look, we're going to target this and have a plan towards it. And then something's actually, the needle starts to change. So I think it's really having that leadership and that vision.
Well, so that's quite interesting. I thought you were going to go into the specifics, but actually it's commitment. Put the commitment in place and then you will find a way because you are going to be accountable for it.
Yeah.
That's quite a big one. I'm just juggling now. I'm not looking at my text on the phone. We're actually getting some questions from other places in the world, but I actually didn't want to ignore the people in the room. So if I can, I don't think we've got a roving mic. Yeah. I'm just going to take 2 questions in the room first, I think, since you've made the effort to be here, and then we'll go from there. See how we're doing for time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll stay sitting for this, but I come from the United States of America, and the work that I do, of course, is active travel on my own planning and zoning commission when I ran for office. And I'm not sure if you know, but a lot of what we do is local government nuanced, and a lot of the red tape gets in the way from actually achieving these policy solutions. So I guess my question to you, and I'll keep it very brief, is what advice would you have to me as an American citizen to go back home, to bring back good policies and actually work past through a lot of the rough and tuggle that gets stuck in the weeds?
Thank you. Well, I'll let any of the panelists who want to contribute, but I think I'll come to you because you've been solving that red tape problem for quite a while, I think.
It's just start making make local policy, and then it often will go on national level. It starts locally. That's my advice. Very short, but...
What's the motivation for doing that, though? Why would any local authority want to change?
Because the people see the local politic makers, and they ask them to make it safe or to make it more livable, and that will stop.
I have a bit of advice because I have friends in LA, and you literally can't physically walk. There's one metro. It goes from nowhere to nowhere. It's kind of hard. And I would say start with schools. That's where you start, because if you're going to build a community, you've got to build a community of people who are car drivers and who maybe drive their kids to school, but maybe want to change because it's faster. And once you've built that community, then you build out from that. It's a bit like the Kindermord campaign, which is, we're not going to have no more dead children. If you start with that, everyone's nodding along. So it's a political, if you're running for office, you have to get people nodding along with you. And if you say it's going to be hard, there's going to be loads of disruption, we're going to build a cycle lane, we're going to cut down some trees, everyone's like, nah, that's okay. If you say no more dead children, I think people, and we're going to cut road deaths and injuries. Do you want to have some cleaner air? Yeah, people start nodding. So think about where the nodding zone is for you when you're starting those conversations.
I think that motivational point's really important, and I'm just going to, off the back of that, it's a beautiful segue. Active Travel England, who does this for England, has launched today its School Streets Guidance. Ooh, topical.
It's like we planned it.
It is unbelievable, unbelievable. And I think that's really important, and I will make that point myself because I've been involved in the emotional side of this at a local level, and that motivation is what helps cut red tape. Helps people want to get through the red tape. And we've been doing a lot of focus group work on what plays with people, and we've spoken to them about it's worth 53 billion to the economy. Don't care. That's it doesn't. I'm trying to pay my mortgage. But when we talked about the kids having transport independence and the ability to stay at after school clubs, suddenly they were leaning in and were really interested. And we were talking about the same thing, but we were talking to the outcomes that they could connect to. And when you're going to change a streetscape locally, don't give it an acronym that people can disassociate from emotionally and learn to hate. Call it a child safe zone. And then if you want to campaign against it, fine, but you're campaigning against a child safe zone. And it just changed the whole framing, and people understand and realise why this difficult thing is happening, and it's for something I care about. I won't throw that around. I'm going to get 2 more questions in, depending on how quick we are. At the back, please, if that's all right.
Hello, my name is Guillaume. I'm part of a group of cyclists called the COP29 bike ride that rode from France, Germany, Netherlands, and till Baku. We did 6,000 kilometers.
A round of applause there.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. And Yolaine here was part of the crew. So the reason why we did this, actually there are many reasons, but I would like to interject on what Jill said earlier on the fact that in fact 60% of our travels are less than 5 kilometers long in the city. So, well, you know, if we did 6,000 kilometers to come to the COP, maybe you can do 5 kilometers to go to the movies or buy something. My question to the panel is because on the way we saw different situations and we saw how much the change actually depends from the political leadership, from their vision. We saw very contrasted situations between Paris, for instance, where the mayor is entirely in favor of active mobility. And I will not dare, name the city that's totally opposite to Paris on my way, not to name shame. But the question is, I think it's depending so much on political vision. The question is how we get our political leaders to actually embrace this vision. And I think it's really, as activists and also as, I would say, concerned citizen, the question is how can we achieve that? Knowing that for a political person, it's very hard because you need to cut on car lanes and so forth. Thank you.
Should we take one more question at the same time? So how do we get the minister to want to do this was the question, wasn't it? Right, just lodging that one there.
Hello, thank you for the event today. It's been really interesting. I have a question about cycling and gender. So I lived in the Netherlands for a year and I'd always loved cycling, but that really made me inspired to have cycling as kind of a mode of transport. I lived in Leiden and it was amazing. And then I moved back to London and commuted to work there for a couple of years. And one of the main differences that I found was that I was one of the only women commuting to work in London. And I just wondered from anyone in the panel, how can we kind of change that and make it more accessible for women?
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to go to the first one to you. I would actually slightly change the framing of your question. How do we enable political leaders to actually want to champion this cause?
Well, I mean, I think I was just reflecting, Chris, we're a long way from the Binley Road Cycleway, which is where you and I last met each other. And it's world-class engineering delivered by road engineers in Coventry, not without controversy. And the extension to the hospital, which was what I was thinking about with our Let's conversation, is also not without controversy because we're going to have to lose about 30 trees. And you go down that section of road and there's ribbons and protests and all sorts of things attached to it. So, and people need their cars to get to the hospital. So it's really interesting to hear stories and sharing from other countries where it's like, no, in the Netherlands they cycle to the hospital. So I think there's a thing about creating possibilities and creative storytelling that politicians are quite nervous about doing. Nobody likes to be the person to tell people what they're going to do, which might be why there's some shyness around the NDC commitments from lots of countries. But I do think that's something we need to take back and look at. And I do think we need to be talking about the air pollution crisis. Electric vehicle transfer is not going to be enough to tackle the air pollution crisis. So we need to be talking about, it's jargon, but it is co-benefits. Just on women, I've been cycling since I was 8 years old. I now have 3 bikes. I'm always in the market for one more. Yeah, I know. I don't have a Boardman bike yet. But I think women, for me, are the indicator species. It's a bit like, how do you know if you've got a healthy river, you've got salmon in it? It's like the indicator species. How do you know if you've got, if you've reached everybody with cycling, and that it isn't just for the brave men, and you've got women cycling, and I would say women from minority communities would be the kind of the Dutch inclusive version of that. How do you make it literally for everyone? Because walking is for everyone. It's literally what we were built to do. Cycling is the next thing up because it's so much fun, it's so much cheaper, and it's so much more enjoyable and better for mental health. So I think London is doing well on women's cycling compared with other cities. But the other thing I would say about cycling infrastructure, I'm going to eat my own remarks, so I'm going to finish there.
Okay, great. And I would point out, isn't it a refreshing change that I'm the only bloke on this panel? You know, I did sport yesterday, and that was a very different affair, and that's probably part of the solution as well. Anybody got a really brief burning comment you want to make? Because I'm watching the clock, and I'm going to leave a little bit of time for Mary to come back. I don't think we've got time for another question. I hope our panellists will be able to stick around and answer some of those in the lobby in a moment. Then Mary, I'm going to hand to you for a bit of a summary. Thank you.
Okay. Well, can I just? Sorry, I was kind of rolling into my conclusion there, but I just want to say, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for brilliant chairing of the event. Can I thank each of our panelists for giving us such a lot of food for thought about how we increase the catchment area for public transport, and some of the research. I think the research into active travel, it's an under-researched area, and it's not seen as an investable commodity. I think there's another thing there. That's why it doesn't have the prestige of the automotive industry, of the train, even the train industry. Thank you so much, Lucy, for talking about people-centred design. I hope that means that when we get the new high-speed 2 railway carriages, which I'm very much looking forward to taking from Euston Station, that we get integrated cycle parking, that we don't have any windows with blanks where you can't actually look out of the windows. Some of the seating in the trains, in the new trains, does not actually have a window, and as human beings we're designed to look out and see things. So thank you for thinking about cycling and walking as part of our nationally determined contributions. Arlette, thank you for your inspirational talk and for sharing your political story about political choices and public pressure really being the route through. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on hardware, software and orgware. We're going to take back the software and orgware points. I think we're very good on hardware. We're less good on those other kind of bits that drive behaviour change. And Jill, thank you for the work that you've done on thinking about how we can get a 50% reduction in carbon dioxide by 2030 and how we integrate cycling better with public transport. It's so interesting. On 2 railway lines out of Euston, on West Midlands trains, you can walk up, you can chuck your bike on the train. There's parking for about 4 bikes on the train. On Avanti West Coast, you have to get there 15 minutes before, you have to pre-book, it has to go in the guards van, and you've got to be ready and jumping off the train. I had the driver helping me off the train with my bike the other day. So, it's kind of like, this is not a seamless, it's a high anxiety moment. So I think there's a lot of food for thought there. Thank you to our cyclists who have really inspired us by cycling 5,000 kilometres. It is incredible. I asked Chris if he had some snacks ready for you. He said he'd had a few packets of Quavers. I hope they have now been transferred over to you. Thank you to all of you for coming today, and happy walking, wheeling and cycling wherever in the world you are watching and wherever in the world you're from. Thank you very much.